Good afternoon, everyone. Just to say, we'd like you to start getting settled in your seats, and we apologize for the little delay, but we're awaiting the arrival of His Worship the Mayor, who is part on the program, the official program. So we'll give him a few more minutes before we actually begin. I know that all of you are aware that Brinsley's book is here on sale, and he's here to autograph the book as well. And we look forward to starting the proceedings in a couple of minutes. Thank you. Okay, everyone, we're about to start, please, so can we ask you to take your seats? Those of you who are trying to get Brinsley's signature, he's going to be signing afterwards. We did warn him. We have lots of seating. Before we actually start, we use to get the usual standard safety briefing for the venue. Are we ready with the safety
The
briefing?
Naparima College Auditorium, we ask that you please pay attention to the following safety information. At this time, please turn off all cell phones or engage the vibrate-only feature of the device. Washrooms are located in the lobby area in the upper level of the auditorium and to the left and right of the stage. All movements up or down the amphitheater section of the auditorium must occur along the sides, where a handrail is provided. In the event of an emergency where an evacuation of the building is necessary, please proceed quickly and calmly to the nearest exit. Please take a moment now to identify which exit is closest to you. There are 4 exits located along the top of the amphitheater section, and 1 at the left and the right at the lower level. Thank you for your attention, and we hope you have a great experience with us.
Can we stand for the national anthem, please? Thank you all very much. Some of you have been here very early o'clock. You can take your seats. My name is Josanne Leonard, and on behalf of Royards and the alumni, the Naparima alumni, I want to say a special welcome to, if we are streaming, to our Facebook audience on the NAPS alumni book. We have a lovely evening ahead, and without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Nizam Mohammed, son of San Fernando, to be the chair for the rest of the formal proceedings. Nizam.
Thank you very much, Josanne. His Worship, the Mayor, Alderman Junior Regrello, Honorable Justice Peter Jamada, and all you wonderful people. On behalf of Royards Publishing Company, the Naparima College Association of Past Students, and Professor Dr. Brinsley Samaroo. I extend to each and every one of you a very, very warm and cordial welcome. It is said that in youth, when you do what you have to do, you do it with passion. But when age comes on, you do it with some emotion. So if you hear or you perceive a little tremor in my voice, it is not that I am afraid of anything. It is just that I am so overwhelmed that this event is actually taking place. So today, the hill is filled with the sound of history. The old boys, if I may say so, they have put together history from the 30s, coming down up to this day. Something has happened, and I do not know whether it has been fate or destiny. I never thought that Adrian Cola Rienzi, his life and his work would be recognized and he would be immortalized. So you understand my feeling. We live in a society where there is supposed to be justice in every direction. Yet, as we continue to collapse, there is so much injustice. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Dr. Brinsley Samaroo has sought to put something right, something that has been terribly wrong in Trinidad and Tobago, unconscionably so. And he has sought to put that right. When I read that book, and I looked at the scholarly presentation, where he seems to have consciously and deliberately avoided his personal feelings, and he has been so highly professional, I say that the life and times of Adrian Cola Rienzi is presented in such a way that there will be silent disappointment in those who felt that he was not worthy enough. An old boy of Naparima College, professor, an old boy himself, and all the executive, current executive who have come together with Royards. They have made this event possible. And I feel confident that we are going to have a wonderful afternoon, an afternoon of celebration, celebrating the life of a man who deserves to be celebrated. We have a few words of welcome and remarks by the acting principal of Naparima College, Mr. Roger Ali. Mr. Roger Ali.
His Worship, the Mayor, Alderman Junior Regrello, the first citizen of our great city of San Fernando, the Honorable Faris Alwari, Member of Parliament for San Fernando West, the Honorable Brian Manning, Member of Parliament for San Fernando East, the Honorable Rudranath Indar Singh, Member of Parliament for Couva South, Mr. Marcus Gildari, Councillor for the Electoral District of Maribela South for Stabella, the Honorable Mr. Justice Peter Jamada, our future Speaker, Professor Dr. Brinsley Samaroo, Mr. Clifford Narayan Singh of Royards, Mr. Joel Simmons, President of the Naparima College Association of Past Students, Mr. David Sami, our former Vice Principal of Naparima College, to our Chairman, Mr. Nizam Mohammed, members of the media, specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and good afternoon. This year, Naparima College celebrated 128 years. 128 years. And so we are honored to be part of the team which is hosting this book this evening. We are honored to see you all here back on our hill. And today we had several events on our hill which welcome back everyone. We started off this morning and we had our blood drive, which again, and I congratulate our Past Students Association and the President and his team for having that blood drive here this morning. And so too this morning, our scouts met for the first time since the pandemic arrived. And this morning, it was good to see the hill alive again, and so too this evening. So as we look to our future, we continue to focus our attention here at Naparima College on the holistic development of our students who are well-rounded, well-disciplined, emotionally intelligent, and so achieve outstanding academic results, which validates our school motto, a posse adesse, from possibility to actuality. I assure you, we will continue to pursue academic excellence based on our noblest ideas and principles within the rich moral and spiritual framework which we all are accustomed to, within a peaceful, harmonious, and environment. At this point, I would like to recognize again the Naparima Association of Past Students and our President, Mr. Joel Simmons, for their role in the contribution to this program this evening. And the past students play a very significant role in contributing to the corporate life of our Naparima College here. I would also like to recognize our PTA, the Naparima Association of Parents, Students, and Community, who continue to support our mission and vision here. I am sure that this book will leave a legacy to our nation, to Naparima College as well, and so assist us today in not only remembering our past, but how we as a community, we as Trinidad and Tobago, can use our past to improve our future. I wish everyone here a pleasant evening as we continue into our event. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali. As we go along, let me recognize so many distinguished individuals. You know, thanks to COVID, we have stopped recognizing each other. So many of you I have said hello to, and you have greeted me, and you leave me wondering as to who you are. No fault of yours, as I say. This is the situation in which we have found ourselves. So I want to recognize this wide cross-section of wonderful people, politicians, past and present. The labor movement is represented. I see two of my good friends from the OWTU here. Colleagues of mine in the legal profession, headed by Senior Counsel Israel Khan, civic groups, and especially, and that word is Josan's word, especially the secondary school students who have responded to our invitation and who are here with us. We really appreciate your presence. Members of the clergy, and I understand we have a Facebook audience as well. I'll now ask Mr. Clifford Narayansingh from Royards Publishing to say a few words to us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The Mayor of San Fernando. Are you hearing me in the back there? The Mayor of San Fernando, Justice Jamada, Professor Samaroo, ladies and gentlemen, students from secondary school. I would like to express my appreciation and thanks for your presence here this evening. It's a great measure of solidarity which we have shared over the years. And your presence here is certainly an indication of your interest in and your support for this occasion. It's an occasion that marks continuity, in that it reaches deep into the past and looks toward the future. A vital link that is so good for the future and even for the development of our civilization. I wish to preface my remarks on this evening by defining or describing Royards' role in our society and in the wider region. Our company has been engaged for the most part in the preparation of curriculum materials for primary and secondary schools in the Caribbean in the form of textbooks in response to the academic and the pedagogical needs of our society. That has been our major thrust. Our network of textbooks encompasses all the Caribbean, extending to Bahamas, the Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, and Belize, and also the inner city schools of the United States. Our general publications, be they medical, sports, biographical, they have a worldwide, global market. In addition, Royards has recently created a platform, an electronic platform, which really grew out of the pandemic, and trying to get material to your household. And this is a facility for educational publishers, for authors, for libraries, for institutions, to develop and to monetize your platform, your work. Simply put, you can bring your material to the platform and have it disseminated throughout the world. The publication of this work on Rienzi is in a very particular way the kind of trend or the trend Royards has taken over the past 10 years. Even recently in the pandemic, during the pandemic, we produced Ken Ramchand's Matter the Rising, an update of his column. Tony Dial, Tony was last seen. John Humphreys, a book by Zorina Shah, was just released recently in a collaboration with Susulan. And I see my good friend Lennox Sankasing in the audience there. And recently we also did, I'm telling you of work notable and which should be in the public domain. Ken Charles, the legendary Ken Charles, Mr. Solo, and to be released, my last biography on Shivnaran Chandapal, Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright. The publication of this work, the response to the author to publish this work derived from three major considerations. Firstly, the inherent social responsibility which a production of this work implies, and we view it as enlightened research for the benefit of society. Secondly, the company was engaged with a historical work, a biography, a narrative of experience fashioned out of deep and extensive research and from the author's personal engagement with the subject of the work, Cola Rienzi. So the procedures, therefore, which informed the publication of this work were based on principles such as respect for the authenticity of the work and restraint in interfering with the author's work, but at the same time doing our editorial work. And thirdly, our interest in this work stemmed from a real identification with the substance of this work, its honest rendering of undistorted realities, very different from work which by their very nature are political and in intent. Here is a work that invites the attention of multiple audiences: the historian, the sociologist, the trade unionist, the educator, and the common reader. We thought it would be a work that will engage meaningful transaction with the reader. Here was a man, if I may speak of Rienzi very briefly, here was a man whose conviction, whose philosophy was translated into positive action. Unlike the barren stagnancy of platitudes we hear daily in our very desiccated and decadent society. The procedures for the work were far from official and impersonal. There was constant contact with the author, setting schedules, time schedules, pictorial work, and this made the initiative an enhancing relationship. It is felt, we feel that we have, although it was very unofficial or very, when I say lack of formality, we felt that this work, in our view, reflects quality and high standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Narayan Singh, for giving us that update on the pioneering works of Royards Publishing. I'm not an old boy of Naparima. I wasn't that lucky. But in 1964 and 65, I was attending Naparima Teachers Training College here on the hill, where Brinsley was a visiting lecturer and where he had a profound influence on his students. That relationship did not end there. He encouraged me to apply for a degree in history at UE, and I was accepted, but I went to the UK to do other things. And he even assisted me in very, very important ways to see me through those challenging days. And when I read that book, I was reminded of two experiences that I had with Brinsley, and let me just quickly share this with you. Very interesting. He was in London and he had already completed his doctorate. He asked me to accompany him to visit one of his friends, Krishna Gowanda, a self-styled socialist. And we went to his place. And students in London, you are not used to luxuries. And this friend of Brinsley brought out some choice Scotch whiskey and Cuban cigars, hand-rolled Cuban cigars. All I can tell you is I partook of both, and now throwing my mind back because of what I read in this book, you know, I remember one short sentence in Charles Dickens's Great Expectations. He ate the bread ravenously. Well, I had a cigar, Brinsley didn't, and I actually passed out. And the lesson I learned from that is that when you come from the peasantry and you are aspiring to the dreams, you know, cigars are not made for you. That is for the aristocracy. Another one very quickly, Brinsley sent me to meet Albert Gomes. That was a kind of dream experience for me. And Brinsley was prodding him to complete his biography through a maze of color. And Brinsley gave me, I made my own arrangements. He was a clerk in the county council outside of, I think it was in Sussex somewhere. I found a place and I visited, but you know what? It was a dead end, hardly a road, it was a lane. And the front garden of that, if I may call it that, it was overgrown with grass so tall, like corn grass that we have in Trinidad. And he was expecting me when I went into the house, a gray flat house, damp, cold, doesn't seem as if it was occupied, but the ante-room, the first room that caught my eyes was a room filled with books, books upon books. And that was my first lesson in politics, that you engage in politics, and like Rienzi and so many of us, you reach a dead end like Albert Gomes. He found himself in a dead end lane in that remote place that I visited him. So those are two instances that came back to my mind as I read this book. The reason why I tell you that is because I want you to buy the book, in short. We will move now to some greetings from His Worship, our Mayor, Alderman Junior Regrello. Your Worship.
In the interest of time, I will forego the very long salutation list that was so eloquently mentioned by the previous speakers. The history of San Fernando is not very well documented, particularly by those who would have contributed significantly to the development of San Fernando's landscape. And it is in that context that we should commend Professor Samaroo and all those responsible for this evening's exercise. Adrian Cola Rienzi is one of those, or was one of those individuals who contributed to our development, a former mayor of San Fernando. And we, those of us who are not familiar, because I have not read this book as yet, and many others, my generation and others, may not be familiar with the work of Adrian Cola Rienzi. And you will have to ask the question first, who was Adrian Cola Rienzi? former alderman, former mayor of the city of San Fernando, and a lawyer. But was he a politician? A politician ahead of his times? Because for someone in the 1930s, in very turbulent times, to recognize the value of two critical ethnic groups, to bring them together to achieve an objective that was very necessary and needed, speaks to good politics. That only happened twice, to the best of my knowledge, in the 1930s and 1970. Maybe we, the current politicians, need to understand the importance of bringing those two ethnic groups together. Was Rienzi a politician? Was he an opportunist? Was he ahead of his times? How did he understand that? Or was he a very complex person? Or was he affected by the colonial system? Did he understand that he had a personality, good looks, and very well qualified? Did he understand that maybe Butler wasn't accepted? Maybe Butler was a rabble-rouser and could not bring the groups together? And he had something that he could have brought to the table and bring these groups and bring the recognition, the understanding? I'm only asking questions. On the 24th of June in 1937, while Butler was in hiding, Rienzi summoned thousands of persons and gathered in Skinner Park and passed a resolution that allowed him to interact with central government on behalf of Butler. That resolution spoke about that Butler and the strike had absolutely nothing to do with what was happening, to the pain and suffering that occurred during that time. That would have been a master stroke, and went further to defend Butler and won his case. We will get that information by reading this book, all of us. It's unfortunate that, as I said in the beginning, our history is not well documented. As the mayor of San Fernando, in my second term, I've been browsing through our records. We have absolutely nothing. It is in that context, again, 2 years ago, we summoned Professor Samaroo to the office, the City Hall, and said, Professor Samaroo, you have some work to do, and you still have some time on your hand. He has been commissioned to write the history of San Fernando from 1900 to 2020. And this is where if you go to the library in Port of Spain, there's so many textbooks about Port of Spain and people who would have contributed to Port of Spain. Why that void continues to exist in San Fernando. We are so proud of Rienzi and so many others, and I dare say the institution of Naparima College that have produced so many of our heroes. But it's important for us to have our history, because this is a lost set of information that my generation and generations to come will be able to appreciate. So, Professor Samaroo, your work is not completed. We have some work to do. Prior to that, the only document we have is something written by Michael Anthony, San Fernando from 1595 to 1900. But during that period, there's so many things that we need to do. The entire city spoke French in the 1800s, the early part of 1900. Some of us don't even know that. So I would like to congratulate, on behalf of the city, congratulate Professor Samaroo and all those who contributed to this document that is so vital and so important for all of us. May you have tremendous success at the bookshop. We all purchased a copy of this. And there's a new reference library on the library corner, just opposite Eden Center, for those of you who do not know. We need to have a copy of this book there, so our school students who peruse the year will get the opportunity to read this book. Congratulations to all of you who contributed, and may you continue to have success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Let me welcome our Member of Parliament for San Fernando East, Mr. Brian Manning and Mrs. Manning. Very nice to have you all with us. I'm glad that you mentioned, Your Worship, about bringing the ethnic groups together, because throughout the presentation in this book, it seems to me, this is one of the impressions I got, and we'll hear more from Justice Jamada. The author has actually emphasized the subject. Rienzi and his works that were based on a class struggle, and at the same time recognizing needs of the two major ethnic groups in the society. So we come to that point where Justice Peter Jamada, remember in my opening remarks I said that we are pulling threads of history together. Well, he has come as a third generation in the Jamada family, and he was asked to read the book and give us an overview of his feelings about this piece of work that Professor Samaroo has done. And his grandfather is mentioned in the book. His father was involved in the heady days of the 75s, late 75, Bloody Tuesday, leader of the opposition, member of parliament for several terms, outstanding attorney, outstanding barrister at law. And his grandfather has been one of the pillars of the legal profession in San Fernando. So I now take pleasure in asking Justice Peter Jamada, who is Justice in the Caribbean Court of Justice, a sitting judge in the Caribbean Court of Justice. He has a background serving in our Supreme Court in Trinidad and Tobago and the Court of Appeal in Trinidad and Tobago before going on to the Caribbean Court of Justice. I take great pleasure in asking him to come and share his thoughts with us. Justice Jamada.
Good afternoon, and welcome to everyone who has taken the time to come and share in this very important occasion this afternoon. Dr. Samaroo documents that Adrian Cola Rienzi said, "The thoughts that come from San Fernando lead Trinidad and Tobago." Most of you, not all, if not from San Fernando or from the South, have connections with the South and with San Fernando. As Southerners, We should be proud to be heirs of a legacy, of the legacy that not was, but is Adrian Cola Rienzi. I cast my mind or my imagination to the 1930s, even post-1945. And I wonder whether at a meeting such as this, it would have been a dangerous thing for me, a judge, to be addressing fellow revolutionaries, comrades at arms, in the business of societal change. Today, if I were to say, when I came up here, comrades, welcome to this, it's not Tuesday evening as Rienzi met, but welcome to this meeting place, this place where we shall talk about ideas that can change not just our country, but the world. Because that is what we celebrate and recognize today. This is not a work of history. It is a story of a living legacy. And I thank the publishers, Mr. Narayan Singh, and your establishment. And I say Dr. Samaroo, forgive me, Professor Samaroo. I've always referred to him as Dr. Samaroo, and I mean no disrespect for this effort. When I came up here, I should have said, all protocols accepted, because there are so many dignitaries. Some are official, some were, and some will always be. Forgive me. But I think if we are truly comrades at arms, then formalities are irrelevant. All of us gather here as friends. All of us gather here in a common cause to celebrate a life and work. To something more mundane before I share some other thoughts. In the Caribbean, publication, Nizam, is a dead-end business. Mr. Narayan Singh has become a millionaire of a publication, and I commend him for that, because most Caribbean publishers fold and collapse. But I say this, his social conscience to invest in works which are not on the face of it destined for profit says something about the man and his company, and I want to say we are grateful. Dr. Samaroo, please. And to Dr. Samaroo, you know, like a great artist, when you read this, and I realize that, Mr. Narayan Singh, you have a problem because with the number of people here, you don't have enough books. So what I would suggest you do is lock the door and make sure everybody buys a copy before they leave, and at least you will sell what you brought. I encourage you all, please take a copy and take an extra copy to give someone. This is worth the read. Trust me, it is worth the read. I could not put it down, and I have a lot to read, but I could not put it down. Like a great artist, Dr. Samaroo has created a painting for us, a tapestry. There is a background, a context upon which he quite skillfully places in the foreground and mid-perspective aspects of Adrian Cola Rienzi's life. And so the reading of this work is not burdensome. It amazes me that let me make sure, in 152 pages, he has captured so much. A lesser mortal would have taken 500 pages to document this. What's the good news? It's bite-sized, my friends. So I have not been paid by the publisher to market the book, but I am marketing it. It's excellent, its content is brilliant, the painting of the landscape is exquisite, and it's short. What more can you ask for? I am told the price is good. I don't know if there's a discount today, but you can negotiate that. Lord Steen, I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for all of my professional life, and I've been a judge for over 23 years. And so forgive me. But Lord Steen has said, in law, context is everything. What Adrian Cola Rienzi's life tells us is that in life, context is also everything. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? When you read this story, I want you to remember your own lives, because the story of Adrian Cola Rienzi is also our story. That is one of the things that resonated most with me, how in reading about him, I read in my own life. His contexts shaped him. Historical context, ideological context, cultural context, personal context, the context of his accomplishments and successes, and also his idiosyncratic contexts. All of them came together and shaped and formed the person that he was and the work that he did. And I want to suggest that that is true for all of us. And why is that important? It's important because if we can reflect not just on the now, but also on who we are, our history, where we've come from, we can have a sense of our identity, our purpose, and our vocation in this life. All of us will not be as great as Adrian Cola Rienzi, but all of us can make a difference. And that's why this work is important for young people. This is not a work of history. It's not about the past. It's about what is possible for each and every one of us. You probably all know the story of the 6 blind persons and the elephant. It's a story where 6 blind persons were in an area and they heard that an elephant was close by and they were curious. And so they ran to discover what this elephant was. And each one engaged the elephant. One held its tail and said, "It's like a rope." One held the tusk and said, "It's like a spear." The ear, a fan. The stomach, etc. Truth is perspectival. Yet still we often assert that what we know is truth. The truth is, we don't really see things as they are. We rarely see things as we are. But what Dr. Samaroo has done in this work so expertly is he has pulled together multiple contexts, multiple perspectives, and given us a sort of 360-degree view of an individual, and out of that, a shape and a form, a three-dimensional sense of a person, of a agency is portrayed. What I do not want to do this afternoon is to tell you anything about what's in this book. So if you came here thinking I'm going to give you a brief summary of what's in the book, then you will be disappointed. You buy the book and you read it. What I want to tell you, however, is that Adrian Cola Rienzi's grandfather was born in Bihar in northern India, Chetnath Tiwari, and he was a warrior in the Indian Revolt of 1857, known as the Great Revolt. That after that revolt, the British Empire embarked on a systematic policy of vengeance, driving Chetnath to Palmyra. That is how Rienzi, Krishna Dionarine, found a place in this part of the world. But that ancient memory, that spirit of ancestor, present in his father, his grandfather, bears fruit in the grandson. I want to tell you that Rienzi takes a name. Born Krishna Dionarine, he takes a name which is driven by purpose. As a young person at Hobson's law firm, Hobson still exists in San Fernando, he was influenced by an English magistrate, Adrian Clark. And under the influence of a stalwart San Fernandian, Dalton Chady, decided not only to pursue law, but to change his name. And Dalton did the deep-hole. What would he choose as his name? We don't quite know why, but what? Adrian, influenced by a mentor of sorts, this magistrate, and very interestingly, by the Italian patriot and political activist Cola Rienzi. So how did he conjure up Adrian Cola Rienzi? From that time he knew who and what he was and what his purpose was. Cola Rienzi is taken from the Italian patriot and political activist Cola Rienzi. Context is everything. And if we understand context, we can understand ourselves, we can understand our society, and we can forge a path that makes a difference. And that's what this is about. So those are two little nuggets, two little sort of aperitifs for you to invite you into this work. As I said, Dr. Samaroo has most expertly woven these multiple threads in the life of Adrian Cola Rienzi to create what I think is a tapestry of facts, stories, emotions, textures, hopes, disappointments, loves and struggles. He describes his wife as the most beautiful woman in all of England. There's romance in this. Dr. Samaroo does not say it, but I will. This is very much a story of love. What do I mean by that? You know, love and death are the same. What do I mean by that? To love is to give yourself fully and totally to another, but even to a cause, to a purpose, to a vocation. People like Clifford Narayan sing, the work they do may be motivated in part by other factors, but it's also by love. It is also a work of love. The work of Dr. Samaroo is a work of love. The work and life of Adrian Cola Rienzi for the people of Trinidad and Tobago and for the Caribbean, I want to suggest, was a life and work of love, sacrificial. You know, at the end of his career, his aspiration was to be a judge. Sir Solomon Hotroy and the then Attorney General, not then Sir Ellis Clark, assured him, no problem, Adrian. You will be appointed a judge, but the colonial office, like Big Brother of today, had an eye on him, because when he went to the UK from those days, you remember his name change. He was attracted to socialism. In truth, Fabianism. But in those days after 1945 and the Cold War, anybody too close to communism was a threat. And so at the pinnacle of his career, having served in so many ways his country, when the nomination was recommended, the colonial office said no. No. He knew disappointment. So disappointed was he that he wrote to London to complain, to say, I have served this country. What nobody could do to bring oil workers and sugar workers, to unionize them, to bring them together in a constructive way, I have done. I have served on the Legislative Council. When adult suffrage was being debated, the Legislative Council in Trinidad said no. They said waifs had no right to vote. And those people who sleep on the streets have no right to vote. Rienzi wrote a minority report. The local legislative council would have none of it. He took that argument to London. And by order in council, that means the British in London overruled the Legislative Council and said, adult suffrage, universal adult suffrage for all. You know who were the targets? Who? Oil and sugar workers, basically brown-skinned people like you and me. In other words, none of you here were good enough for those who ruled Trinidad to have a say in governance. Rienzi stood against that, fought that battle here, lost at the Legislative Council, took it to London, and for London to exercise that power of fiat by order in council was exceptional because it was sort of saying to the local legislative council, you must do what we say. So that was an exceptional exercise of power. That person was not independent. Let me give you a little bit more before I say what I want to say. In 1937, I believe, Dr. Samaroo, I have the dates, if I have the dates wrong, forgive me. When was the OWTU formed? 1937. Rienzi was not an oil worker. There were 4 nominees for the position of President General. I see amongst us here trade unionists who know this history better than I could ever know it. And in the end, they deferred to an Indo-Trinidadian non-oil worker leading the OWTU as its first President General. I think that deserves a round of applause. I want to share another little story with you. As early as 1930, he was engaged in debates with Sipasad Naipaul of Naipaolian lineage. I won't say more here about that. And he was engaged in a big debate with Naipaul about Indian identity. And Naipaul was concerned about, quote, dangerous feminine evolution. He was concerned about Bobism. Do you know what Bobism is? Who knows what Bobism is? Some of the older people may. All right, Bobism was women who cut their hair short. I'm seeing a few women who have fallen into this heresy of Bobism with us today. So for all of you who are practicing Bobists, let me tell you how the debate went. For Naipaul, Bobism was a no-no. That was part of the dangerous feminine evolution. So all you women who have short hair, you are dangerous people. Be warned. Naipaul was concerned about interracial relationships. This is Rienzi's response. Listen. Love knows not race, nor birth, nor creed. For if 2 individuals of different race are attracted to each other, falls in love, no one could be justified in suggesting that such a union would have a demoralizing effect. That is in 1928 that Krishna Deonarayan had the courage to say that publicly. That is the kind of person that we are dealing with. Long before, in the 60s, women were burning bras. Rienzi was defending women's rights, fighting for equality for women. In relation to Bobism, for those of you who want to know, I'll just share this little tidbit. You remember, these are just aperitifs. Mr. Naipaul must remember that evolution is taking place, and those who do not keep a stride with the other communities will not be able to claim equality and hold their own. Moreover, I must remind him of the old adage, when in Rome, live like the Romans. Mr. Naipaul's arguments are very sentimental, and I am curious to know, this is the punchline, if he does not wear Western garments and think and live along Western lines. So you want to criticize women for cutting their hair short, but what kind of pants and shirt you're wearing and what kind of lifestyle are you engaging? This is the person that was Rienzi. My friends, I don't have unlimited time. I wish I did, because there is so much to tell. This book touches me in two ways very personally. After the Charlie King events, which we all should know, and if you don't know, I'm not going to enlighten you, you need to know. 16 persons were charged with the murder of Charlie King. And Rienzi and two other Southern attorneys defended them. One of those was Alexander Jamadar. My own father, in the spirit of the times, was a revolutionary in his own way. And if I must confess, carefully and diplomatically, as I have said earlier, context shapes us all. It doesn't make a difference what you do or where you go. Your context shapes you. And these impulses that we are born into shape us. In 1946 and 1947, Rienzi did another first. He recognized that there were many people in the Caribbean and in Trinidad who could not afford to go to the UK, the USA, or Canada for further education. By that time, India was independent, as you know, and so he took an initiative and asked for scholarships. My father-in-law in 1951 went to India on a medical scholarship to become a doctor. He was a beneficiary, and I vicariously am a beneficiary of this initiative. Without Rienzi, so many others would not have benefited. In conclusion, therefore, let me say, there are three things that I take and offer you. The value of research-based argumentation. One of the things that Dr. Samaroo does very well, and let me put a parenthesis here, you know, one of the gifts that Dr. Samaroo has is not to impose himself in the work he does. So you read this, and there is no me or I, or no Brinsley, or no doctor, or no professor, or no nothing. What you see and feel and experience is Adrian Cola Rienzi. This is what Dr. Samaroo writes. In a colony in which research was a rarity and emotion characterized the politics of the day, Rienzi was exceptional in the belief of the relevance of research and of learned argument. For all those who are politicians among us, some present, some past, some still aspiring, whenever this little paper comes, it means wrap up, right? Yeah, okay, Nizam, I got it. I'm wrapping up. I think this is something that today we could benefit from. And so I leave that with you, that Rienzi succeeded, not just because of charisma or connections, and Dr. Samaroo documents it, but because of reliance on research-based argumentation. That is what persuaded London to remove. Did I tell you about the Nizam? 2 minutes. Sorry, is it? Who's dropping the hammer on me? Oh, well, no, but there you go. It's a Bobist, so I'm in big trouble. They are dangerous people, and I have to be careful. So a quick one. One of the restrictions that the Legislative Council imposed for voting were not only property restrictions, but what they call language qualifications. If you couldn't speak good English, you couldn't vote. You can't decide who must decide your fate because you can't speak good English. Through reasoned argumentation, he couldn't persuade the local legislative council. London agreed, and by order in council overrode the LegCo and changed it. The second thing I want to share, I'm not going to be long, was the idea of facilitating discussion groups. He formed and sustained until the end what he called the Tuesday groups. They met at his home in St. Joseph Village and just spoke. Now that was the spirit of the time. All through Europe, politics was in coffee shops. It was through discussion. But he understood that because it is through Tuesday groups that a new generation of activists were born under the tutelage of Rienzi. And that is what he practiced. And so I leave that with you. And the last thing I leave with you as I go is the idea of a life of reflective action. If I could rename this, I mean no disrespect, I would say, Adrian Cola Rienzi, a life of reflective action. He is characterized, his activism is characterized by deep, introspective, informed response action. It was not reactivity, as is so prevalent sometimes in what we see. Josan, I could hear you grinding your teeth behind me. Can you all hear her teeth grinding? Yes. And do you know who nodded? All of the bobbists in the group nodded, Josan. Adrian Cola Rienzi's cultural and political activism lasted from the 1920s when he was a teenager. It was marked by two passions, a devotion to socialism and his Indian heritage. Socialism provided him with a sound theoretical framework for mass mobilization, and his Indian connection provided him with an alternative, non-British source of strength and confidence which characterized his actions. Allow me, comrades, the opportunity to say comrades and to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting this work, and I commend it to you.
So Justice, the bobbist is taking over now. I'm sharing duties with Nizam, and we're trying to move the program along. I especially, again, wanted to recognize the schools and the secondary school students that are with us. It's a Saturday, they're millennials. I could see them on their phones, but we're very, very happy that they're here because this is a very important connection to make, and let's give them a round of applause. And I'm in their group, I don't know about the rest of you. Okay, without further ado, it's a pleasure to welcome someone from a standing San Fernandian family, and someone that I'm proud to know as a brother, a colleague, a cultural activist, an alumnus of Naparima. Let's welcome David Sammy.
All right. She didn't warn me. That was a different note. But to Josan and Nizama, I'll be 3 minutes, so hold the chit. Whilst Narayan was promoting the socialist cause, he was simultaneously agitating for the betterment of the Indo-Trinidadian population. He wrote to the London-based Secretary of State for India, calling for commissioners who would look after the interests of Indians abroad. He led a delegation to see the governor in Trinidad for the building of a night shelter in San Fernando, for destitute Indians, but he was refused. Undaunted, he continued to multitask untiringly. He was co-founder of the East Indian Friendly Society, located in Gasparillo, which encouraged savings and self-help in the community. From late 1928 to March 1929, he was one of the hosts for the 3-month visit of Pandit Jaimini Mehta, B.A.L.L.B., a visiting Indian missionary. Mehta made a significant difference to Caribbean Hinduism as he went to British Guyana and Suriname, delivering a different message from Orthodox Hinduism. Mehta was invited by many Hindu groups as well as by Christians and Muslims. He revived a dying Arya Samaj, Society of Nobles, movement by preaching against idolatry, animal sacrifice, ancestor worship, and a caste system based on birth rather than on merit. He advised Indians to settle in Trinidad rather than return to India, since life was better here than there. He advocated the education of women, encouraging parents to send their daughters to India for further education, and centered on the common principles of all religions. His teachings were offensive to Orthodox Hindus. Sipasad Naipal, who attended some of these lectures, expresses the disgust through Dino, a character in Sipasad's novel. I heard him last night. He condemning what he called idol worship. He saying Ram was a rishi, a prophet, not God. He saying a woman who married already could be married again. And he's saying there's nobody like Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva. He's saying a lot of things. Sipasad's son Vidya also takes up the anti-Arya Samaj story. In A House for Mr. Biswas, we are told that these Protestant Hindu missionaries were preaching that caste was unimportant, that Hinduism should accept converts, that idols should be abolished, that women should be educated. It was this philosophy of Mehta and his learnedness which impressed Deonarain and hundreds of other young people. Deonarain noted that Jaimini Mehta had laid the foundation for the awakening of the creative genius lying dormant in East Indian people. This, he hoped, would enable them to make their distinct contribution to civilization and to humanity. I thank you. Oh yes, and I am to bring on, not with a lengthy introduction, but the gentleman himself, the man who put this work together, who has been working tirelessly throughout his life. I don't mean, when he was a lecturer in UE, I was lucky to fall under his tutelage. But this gentleman who started his secondary education here and was formed here in many ways, let us please welcome with a round of applause Professor Brinsley Samaroo.
Right, thank you very much, David, for that introduction. Not too long, not too wordy. And I'd really like to begin my short address by first of all expressing some pranams, some words of gratefulness to those who have made this occasion possible. And the very first person I would like to talk about is Mr. Speaker, sir. who during 1986 to 1991, was my speaker in the parliament, and I learned a lot about parliamentary procedure from the Honorable Nizam. In one of the last meetings we had when the Naparima Bowl was being used, which is about 2.5 years ago, I told him that I was writing this book on Rienzi. And he said in very loud terms that when the book is written, then it has to be introduced here in San Fernando and not where you come from in the north, because Rienzi was a San Fernando citizen. And so in March, when I told Nizam that the book was ready, he said, right, we'll continue to have it launched here. And so this launch that we are having here was largely the work that was done on the initiative of Nizam, who very quickly brought a lot of other people, bringing this occasion to a successful conclusion. So all that I can do this evening is to wish him well, to seek the divine blessings on him and for his continued prosperity during the rest of his life. So, Jazak Allah Khairun. Alhamdulillah. Right, so he replied to me, suitably in Arabic. Now I want to say a special thanks to Willie Chen, who once Nizam told him about this occasion, he immediately said he would volunteer to provide all the initial invitations. So I want to thank Willie for that. I want to particularly thank two Davids who were very instrumental in assisting me. One is David Maharaj, who is here this evening, and who is a native of Palmyra, the village in which Krishna Devanarayan grew up. And he was always encouraging, always asking me questions. And some weeks ago, he even asked me how can he help in organizing this function. And I told him to send a list of invitees to Nizam, which he did. So many of you who are here this evening is at the initiative of David Maharaj. And I want to talk about another David, and that is David Abdullah. And David Abdullah, continuously inquired how the work going, when we're expecting it to finish. But more than that, he guided me to, very extensive sources which told about the creation, the beginning of the OWTU. And I think this is the first account, a ball-by-ball account of the formation of the OWTU, and that is largely as a result of the initiative of David Abdullah. And so I want to publicly thank him. And in the preface, I thank him, but I say, I hope that my analysis does not displease you. I want to thank the Naparima alumni for arranging this occasion, and to tell them that while I am grateful for that, I am not at all surprised, because since 1894, the year in which Naparima College was founded, from that time to the present, Naparima College has been continuously involved in interfacing with the public. So as I said, I'm grateful but not in the least surprised. I want to throw a compliment in the direction of the learned judge who just spoke to us. In a very indirect way, this compliment is really to his ancestry, to his noble ancestry. So I want to go straight to the record and read just one paragraph and then end that afterwards with something that's not in the book, but which is jokey and tragic at the same time. The period immediately following the uprising of Saturday, 19th June 1937, was one of intense repression by the state On the other hand, there was an upsurge of support for the protesters from the middle-class black and brown professionals, some of whom quietly but bravely showed solidarity with the workers. From the beginning, San Fernando-based lawyers volunteered their service in defense of the accused. On the 19th of July, which is about a month after the major incident in Faisabad, on the 19th of July, for example, 16 persons, including 6 women, appeared in the Siparia Police Court charged with the murder of Charlie King. 3 Southern lawyers, namely Victor Lessie, Alexander Jamada, and Rienzi, appeared, sharing pro bono this whole long list of accused persons among the 3 of them. These lawyers were able to secure the withdrawal of charges against 9, leaving 7 to be subsequently tried and freed. But the end of the prosecution's case started here with Jamada and these 2 other lawyers, and I thought I should say that today. There's something else that is not in the book about this Alexander Jamada. On the 21st of June, when he heard that these protesters were going to march through San Fernando, he dropped off his legal tweeds and joined the march. Alexander Jamada, a respectable, high-ranking Presbyterian gentleman who is not supposed to be going with a riffraff like that, but so he did. So they started off in front of the town hall, walked down Penitent Street, and then on High Street joined thousands of others who were coming up from the wharf area, going up to the library corner. And as they reached that area, the TLIV, Trinidad Light Infantry Brigade, and the TTPF were waiting for them. And when the protesters refused to disperse, the TLIV burst bullets in them, killing one immediately, and the other died from his wounds in the hospital. And Jamada, as they recognize him as one of the leaders, was of course beaten and arrested and brought with more than 24 persons into the police station at the top of a promenade. And because the police station couldn't hold so many of them, the police said, well, those who could take bail, take bail. So Jamada took his own bail and as many of the other protesters as he could have afforded. And they were all sent out on their own bail. But here the joke continues. So he was charged for sedition, which is very serious. He could have lost his license to practice because sedition was and is a very serious charge. But his trial lasted all of 10 minutes, and the magistrate dismissed all the charges against them. But then he goes back to his office, dropping the jersey and the dungaree that he wore to join the march and putting on his legal tweeds. And he come back to the same magistrate's court, which had just freed him, and decided to stand again pro bono for all of those who were arrested. And I'm smiling because of the fact that I interviewed a number of these persons after the event. And they said, this Indian man come and he free all the way. This Indian man come and he free all the way. So that is the quality of Alexander Jamada, one of those icons whom San Fernando must remember. So you would read the book, and you would read about the first time in the history of Trinbago that the two major races come together under Butler and Rienzi, and in coming together, this was a watershed event. The history of Trinbago and the rest of the Caribbean was never the same after these disturbances of 1937. Because what happened in Trinidad in 1937 under Butler and Rienzi was like a flambeau which ignited the rest of the Caribbean. And that is why the uprising spread from southern Trinidad to northern Trinidad to the rest of the Caribbean. And that is what necessitated the coming of the Moyne Commission, which brought about significant change in the history of the Caribbean. And that is very important for us to understand on an occasion like this. So you would read about this, in the book. But after you have done your first reading, I want you to go back to chapter 1, which is called the Imperial Framework, the colony in the global British Empire. It can be argued that this is the most important chapter in the book because I tell you what I do. I use my long experience in the political hustings, plus whatever academic training I have had, to fit Trinidad and Tobago in that larger imperial framework. Most of us believe that history started and history will end right here in Trinidad, but Trinidad is only a small dot in a larger world. And so we have to look at the philosophy that the British created to keep us into subjection. I have put a good deal of these philosophical premises which governed colonialism in the book. But there's just one I would like to highlight. I have mentioned it there, and I'd like you to pay special attention to it. And that is the creation of ethnic division, ethnic and religious division throughout the colonial British Empire. So when we say that if you are a UNC supporter, you say Williams caused it, it's Williams who started the whole thing. And if you are a PNM supporter, you say, no, it's Capello who started. It's Capello who started all this racial politics. Both of these analyses are entirely wrong. And I want to spend just a few moments to talk about it. The British understood very clearly that wherever they went in these colonial territories, if the citizens of that country joined against them, they have no chance. So that if all the citizens of Nigeria joined against them, they'll be gone the next day. And if all the citizens of Cyprus joined again, they're gone next day. And if all the people of India stood against them, they're gone next day. So they clearly devised this policy called divide et impera, divide and rule. And wherever they went, they looked at fissures that could be created in those societies and created these fissures, but more important, constantly watered them, constantly fed them continuously, right up to the time when I was a student at Naparima College in the 1950s. This was sedulously created. So that when the British left, they left Nigeria, where they had created as much friction as possible between Igbo and Yoruba and Hausa and Ibibo. What happened in Nigeria? Civil war, immediate civil war. With the loss of so many thousands of lives and the destruction of property. If you go to Cyprus today, you will see that the British did such a good job in Cyprus that there is in fact a wall in Cyprus along the whole length of Cyprus, dividing Turkish Cypriots from Greek Cypriots. Of course, the classic case was in India, where they curried favor. You don't know how curry favor come into being? That started in India, curry favor, where they curried favor between Hindus and Muslims, and constantly offered concession to one while denying from the other, so that one was very jealous of the other. And that is how they succeeded in breaking up Mahabharat, Greater India, in 1947, when there was a Holocaust, as they supervised this breaking up of India into India and Pakistan. And that was a Holocaust, because hundreds of thousands of Hindus and Muslims were massacred by the other, and India was permanently divided. And that division between Hindus and Muslims sadly continues in India today. So that when they came to Trinidad and Guyana, and they saw here, excellent situation, Indians and Africans, so they put in this policy of divide and rule, which in our own time has continued, unfortunately, as the mayor has hinted at us. So what is now necessary, in my view, is that three things need to be done. First of all, there has to be a program of re-socialization, re-education. And I'm not speaking of the primary and secondary schools alone. I am talking about the whole of the society of Trinbago must be told about how we were used as gamecocks that do nothing against each other but fight each other to the death. We must tell the population that I think large numbers of the people of this country don't know, and they go back to talk the foolishness about Williams and Capilio, and these are the two individuals who started it. Right now, we are going to have 5 new political parties, 5 new in addition to the other 2. And all of these new leaders of the 5 new political parties think they don't want racists in their party. Well, if they don't want racists, they have to create new people. They have to manufacture new Trinbagonians, because we are all humbug, we are all infected with this seed of an inter-ethnic antagonism that the British set up. We did not set it up. No Indian hated any African, or vice versa. But we were taught to do that by a regime that saw that as the only way of survival. So I'm saying 3 things. First of all, there has to be a re-socialization of the whole of Trinbago. And as I said, not only in the primary and secondary schools, but in the whole society. There has to be a discussion of this. 2, there has to be constitutional reform in which the 2 ethnicities are virtually compelled to come together and work in a new political arrangement. And when they are put together to work like that, they would find, as I have found in my long political career, that the differences that we imagine and the differences that we talk about outside do not operate at the parliamentary level. There's much more camaraderie. So all I'm saying is that we need constitutional change to bring the ethnicities together for the greater governance of Trinidad and Tobago. And the 3rd platform, I would say, is that there has to be significant reorganization of the economic arrangements in the society. Minister Kazim, a very honest, a very dedicated Minister of Agriculture, can take no steps whatever to diversify agricultural development in Trinidad or to come up with a meaningful program for the economy unless those who have run the economy for the last 100 years, unless they give him permission so to do. And I say that as a former Minister of Agriculture. So I think this is where the discussion now has to take place, where we have to be going out, talking, having conversations like Butler had, like Rienzi had. They didn't stay in the University of the West Indies in the comfort of those surroundings where so many of my colleagues now pontificate about the politics, but they're comfortable in St. Augustine, totally scared to enter the political realm and to walk the plank as politicians. So the final piece of advice I would give to you young people is that you must not stay away from politics. You can do nothing by just standing up and pelting stones from outside. You have to get involved. And from my own long experience in the politics, I think being in the politics is a very rewarding experience for you. And if you come up with good ideas, as I'm suggesting, it can be totally beneficial to Trinidad and Tobago, because that's the direction we now have to go, where we involve the rest of the community, like Butler and like Rienzi did, in order to plot a progressive way forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brinsley. And if you're following your program, we were going to facilitate an audience interaction, but I think we've been sitting for a while, and I know that a lot of you will be sort of converging on and in around Brinsley. So unless you give the bobbist a show of hands that you do want to say something pressing from the floor, I will take it that we could meet over refreshments. So the bobbist is asking, does anyone pressing? Kafra Kambon, and I'm going to keep everybody short, and I'll kill somebody's mic if they go on too long, but there's a microphone there. Kafra Kambon from the Emancipation Support Committee. Can we have the microphone? Audience mic? You want to test it, Kafra? Yep, you're on.
It's on. Okay. Okay, thank you for the few moments, Josanne. It's all I need. I just want to, I haven't read the book, so I can't congratulate my former lecturer on writing on the book yet, but I know I will. But what I've heard about it is great. But I want to say something about Dr. Samaroo, seeing that I was one of his pupils. And in the late 1960s, like all 1968, 1969. That time, you know, a number of us who were on campus, like Makandal, Daga, myself, we used to go into the areas of Belmont and Laventille and just go to where people were liming on the blocks or in clubs, and we used to ask one or two lecturers to go with us, you know, invite them, and Dr. Samaroo is one of the people who took up, I would call it a challenge, because people have their fears about those areas of East Port of Spain. But Dr. Samaroo is one of those people who went with us, and I remember us going into clubs, people playing all the cards and everything else, and we would interrupt and say, we come with some important messages and so, and Dr. Samaroo would be one of the people there with us on that. So I have to say this about him, because whatever he has put in the book and the things that he says, he means, because I've experienced that with him. And one more thing I'll say about him, for the Caroni March, There was a Caroni match in 1970. It was one of the most well-known episodes of the period because there was this challenge of thousands of people from the North Africans marching into central Trinidad. And there was a force like a Badi Sagan Maraj and others who did not want that to happen. They did not want to see the two major ethnic groups in this society come together. And Dr. Samaroo was one of the people because, you know, there was this nervousness between things. And Dr. Samaroo was one of those people who went with some students all into those communities in Central, assuring people that this march wasn't meant to come and rape the women, you know, and steal from you and all of that. And that's one of the roles that he played in that very, very important march of 1970. So I want the public to know that, and I say it here, and I say all praises and thanks to you, Dr. Samaroo.
Thank you, Kafra. Okay, I'll recognize, does anybody else want to make a small contribution? And if not, I'm sure you'll be mixing with Brinsley during the socials. We're going to make it, is this Clive? So I need to wrap it up, so I'm going to just ask that we keep it brief.
Good evening. Greetings to all. I was going to say nothing until I heard Professor Samaroo speak about a new perspective. Because here in Trinidad, we seem to be celebrants. We like to celebrate things. We celebrate 1970, we celebrate 1937. But when you look at our society, where has it gone? The same struggles that we fought, it's still here. We still need the same changes. Our society is still divided. I would like to put out a challenge to the legal minds. Although the framework of the society will not really bring about any change unless we change the society totally. However, in the interim, there seems to be a lot of hidden racism, or sometimes open racism. We talk about an Equal Opportunities Commission. I would like the legal minds to challenge the legal minds that we should frame this Equal Opportunity Commission that places of employment cannot have a predominance of one ethnic group. And this is a sad reality of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, mind you, I am a student of African and Indian Unite. I'm also a citizen of Faizabad, so I'm also a Butlerite. So nothing I say is meant for division, but is meant to unite our society and for us to start heading in a different direction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Joel Edwards, who is the president of the NAPS alumni. Where is Joel? Simmons, sorry, I'm saying Joel Edwards. Joel Simmons.
Good evening, everyone. In the interest of time, I ask that all protocols be observed as I say good evening and welcome. Indeed, it is a pleasure to be gathered here today to celebrate, in my humble opinion, a book launch of an underrated yet pioneering individual in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. More so now that restrictions have somewhat been relaxed and we are able to come together responsibly to socialize. So, on behalf of the executive of the Naparima College Association of Past Students, I would like to thank everyone for being a part of this event. When we were initially contacted about this book launch, I jumped at the opportunity to participate, not only because it involved the brilliant Professor Samaroo, but because it highlighted a major figure in Trinidad and Tobago. Growing up, his story was never really publicized. As youths, we knew the name, but we never understood the weight behind it. So delving deeper into these proceedings, it was a wonder to really see what the life of Rienzi was truly about. And I don't have as much gray hairs as many of the people preceding me, but I represent that younger generation that seeks to bridge that gap and understand really one, history, and the future, and really where we stand. And this is really one of the facets of our association. Our motto is putting students first, and we strongly believe in inclusivity in everything that we do. So assisting to bridge that educational and knowledge gap between generations is really the purpose and focus of our alumni and association. Our young people are sorely lacking role models, persons to look up to and ready to strive to become. It's no secret that, NAPSmen have a certain level of humility about them, where, we forego our ego and strive for excellence in our related fields. Sometimes the downside of that is, not really being able to know who our heroes are and, who really can make a difference in the life of a child. However, this is where we come in, this generation, this alumni, this group of people. We want to bring back that nostalgia, bring back that pride, and more personally here in Naparima that made us such a great institution. We have done so many great projects, to assist those in need, and these are the type of things that we want to publicize so that we could lead and be champions, so that we could carry the torch for our younger generation. So for those who are alumni of the college here, or even those who may be genuinely interested in giving back and helping, let's have that conversation. Just like Rienzi, who saw a need, the disadvantaged being exploited and unrepresented, and being able to bridge the gap and unite, forget about race, just unite everyone for a common cause. I challenge everyone here to take up that mantle as well, in whatever way you can, to make a difference. Not for fame, not for glory, but really to make a better society. I truly look forward to an evening of intergenerational dialogue around such a historic figure. And I must thank again Professor Samaroo for bringing this book together and bringing us together to have that conversation. As an alumnus yourself, thank you for answering that call and really inspiring a generation of young people. I have a short letter from one of your close friends that I will read out to you, Mr. Stanley Algu. Congrats to the NAPS alumnus and Dr. Brinsley Samaroo on the landmark publication of Adrian Cola Rienzi's life. Another NAPS alumnus, distinguished together with Tubal Uriah Butler in the early development of labor relations in Trinidad and Tobago and its march towards home rule, two of the critical movements that led to the liberation from colonialism and eventually to independence. Rienzi is another link in the remarkable history of Naparima College, stretching all the way back to 1894, and its first milestone student, Gillingham silver medalist Scott Fraser, Errol Alva Ramden, double Gillingham gold medalist, and Island scholar Dr. Winston Mahabir, among many stellar graduates. Institutional memory is key to current prestige and vital to avoid institutional amnesia. NAPS is fortunate to possess two digital legacy memories at naparima.org and napsalumni.com to preserve its reputation. Additionally, Dr. Samaroo and the Narayan Singh Royards Publishing House are living links from the 1950s to this precious legacy. Congratulations to the alumnus, author, and Royards for keeping the precious institutional memories alive. So my friends, I thank you once again, and please enjoy the rest of the proceedings.
Thank you very much, Joel. It was a tremendous pleasure working with you, and I think the alumni and the school is in safe hands with your kind of energy and your dedication. And I'd really like to, on my own behalf, because I work very closely with Joel, please give him a round of applause and his team. They did really good work. Okay, I'm going to ask Luciana Narayan Singh, Cindy Sadafal, and Avinda Barath to quickly come to present some gifts to members of our head table and to the MPs. So first, Justice Jamadar, Your Worship, the Mayor. Okay, we had a little, I had a little Bobbis moment there, the bags fell. So the mayor, and then we have Justice, Anne, you presented the mayor? Yes. And if you all come a little center stage, so I guess anybody wants to take a photograph. So we go with the mayor first, and then we have Justice Jamadar, Cindy. Oh, this is a man who understands branding, so he goes right in front of the screen. Okay, and then we have Justice Jamadar, Cindy. No, you have to go center stage. Whose doggy bag you have, Avinda? Mr. Ali, Naparima. And then we have Joel from the alumni. And we have David Sammy. Yeah, you're getting a book. Autographed. We have MP Manning. Okay, I'm going to bring it to you, MP, Minister, because in all of the thingy-majiggy, I think it's gone into somebody else's bag there. I think I made a little bit of a mix-up, but for a photo op. For a photo op, you'll borrow yours for a photo op. And we have one for MP Indar Singh. So, yeah, you want to come up? But you don't have the book yet. We have the bag. Anyway, folks, before we invite you for refreshments, I'm going to ask Dwight Narayan Singh to give a quick vote of thanks on behalf of everyone. Okay, so in case anybody wanted a photo up, but I think you all could go back to your seats, huh? You don't need to thank you very much for putting up with the little faux pas. Yeah, we could go down on that side. We could exit on that side. Brian, I know your bag is one of them, so I will get it and bring it to you. You're welcome. Dwight.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Our revels are now coming to an end, and these actors that you have listened to are not mere spirits who have melted into thin air, in Prospero's words. But here they are flesh and blood characters who have elevated this evening's proceedings. We all wish to thank Justice Jamada for his interesting perspective on the work. His address is a good point of departure, as it will challenge readers to initiate discussions on the work. The author's deep and extensive research, even intrepid research, will also provide discussion among the reading public. There's much clarification on some events which we were not aware of. Dr. Samaroo, you have unplumbed the archives to present a work, and your discourse today will linger in memory. We wish to thank the Honorable Mayor Junior Regrello, the Chairman, Mr. Nizam Mohammed, Mr. David Sami, Mr. Joel Simmons, Ms. Josanne Leonard, Mr. Roger Ali, for their role in this evening's proceedings. And you, the audience, your show of solidarity is what made this evening wholesome and healthy. On behalf of Royards Publishing Company and the Naparima College Past Students Association, we thank you for being here this evening to help create history through our history. I invite you to stay to interface with the author at the book signing. We shall also be treated to light refreshments. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Okay, folks, we can stretch our legs. There's some refreshments to my stage left. There's vegetarian and others. Books are on sale, and we are encouraging, a la Justice Jamada, those of you who can afford it at the reasonable price, to please gift it, especially to a young person or younger persons. So we look forward to that, and Brinsley hopefully will be still signing some books. I hope he doesn't spend the rest of his evening doing that. And everyone else, please join us for some refreshments. Tired.
Right. Yeah, right. See again, man. Sorry, I didn't recognize it. I had no problem with everybody.
I'm glad to see you.
Yeah.
I must see you only in the company no come now.
Tell me
Signed already, no? You just want your name in it? Is that it?
I'll just put it in.
Because it's signed already.
Right, yeah.
Only best way.
Sample and them speaking. So they saying, oh yeah, I don't know. So that's what I'm saying. You know, we are saying that because we up there.
Yeah. But you know, all you should sponsor 2 biographies which I think need to be written, crying to be written. One is Edgar Redvers Blades, who was the right-hand man of Adrian Cola Rienzi. And he lived to 101.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of his documents.
Okay.
He's mentioned quite often in the book here, but he deserves the biography in his own right. Yeah, but look at this, sit down. You should get moving. And another man who needs a biography is a fellow who was here, Samaroo. Pandey was the big man. No, but he is the fellow who kept the machine.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the man,
That's the man.
And I am not talking about somebody tell me. I was active at the same time and he was there.
Okay.
So what I'm telling you is what I saw. All the boring work, all the laborious work, all the negotiation.
But in the what's that thing?
Samaroo. Yeah, he was here tonight.
You know who's our next one? George was president, but Dumat Maharaj used to run the show. When George was in jail and George thing, and no line up and so there's like Dumat Maharaj or Dumat, well, you just be him.
And you have a pen in hand.
This time I buy your book, this one.
Yes, so who name out of it?
And anything else? And anything else?
President of South.
They could say, listen, don't go and know what I'm talking to the man.
Right.
You still go down there alone?
Yeah, I haven't been there for a month because I'm not well. I'm not well. Just had major surgery. No, but let me tell you something. I mentioned an undiagnosable ailment. No, I'll tell you what. And how people just know that the fella had it is when doing the postmortem. You don't know that the man dead out of that when you're doing the postmortem. It is called an aortic aneurysm. Aortic aneurysm is not diagnosable. I was lucky that my partner, when Vijay Narayan, checked me out.
Yeah.
And he said, boy, you could fight it. When this thing busts, you got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So when it busts, you have to don't call me that time. You understand? And there was my partner, Fitzbatiste, who was a lecturer. Yeah, he had decided to fight it. You know this stuff. So that's why I go my arm. Yeah. Because
Do you remember me?
what's in it?
James and Hanuman.
Yeah, we come and see with this mask.
Yeah, I know.
You can't make out people.
Can't make out anyone. You cannot make out anyone.
Yeah. Muffled.
When the fella get up and say he was one of your students, I nearly get up and say, well, I was one of your first students when you just came back from India. 5 years right of the GP. Okay.
What's that?
When I'm down there, I'll check if you're down there today about
Just watching this one last one. So hi. One thing have a good quality pen, right?
Ainsley was what to your father? Yes, no. Yeah, because Ainsley and I were in that.
I'm just coming to say good night. Actually, come on here.
Oh Lord, yes. Again, I can't recognize you because she is blasted mask.
And I want to
she may feel the man just passing me
straight. I want to also encourage you to drink a little water. They have you here, pinned to that chair, and you're writing.